When choosing feed for your baby chicks, one of the decisions you need to make is whether or not you want one with Coccidiostat. I hope this video will help you make your decision that's the best for you and your chicks. First, let's take a look at this tiny enemy, Coccidia. Coccidia is a protozoan parasite. That's a microorganism that's too small to see, but bigger than a virus or bacteria. There are over 1,000 different species of Coccidia, and they live as parasites on most kinds of animals on our planet. Coccidia are very exclusive and specialized parasites. Each species infects only one kind of animal. So although there are Coccidia that infect dogs or even humans, the Coccidia that affect chickens will not affect humans nor your other pets or farm animals. There are 9 species of Coccidia that affect chickens, of which these are the most significant. The various species of Coccidia infect different parts of the chicken's gastrointestinal tract and have slightly different effects, but most often several species of Coccidia are found together, so it's usual to just consider them as Coccidia. The chicken gets infected by eating a tough little packet of nastiness called a sporulated oocyst. Each sporulated oocyst contains 4 sporocysts, each of which contains 2 sporozoites. Enzymes in the chicken's gut and the action of the gizzard break open the oocyst wall and release the coccidial sporozoites. The sporozoites invade the cells of the gut lining, and there they start to multiply. After a few days of doing this, the multiplying sporozoites release another stage of the Coccidia called merozoites. The merozoites develop into gametes, then a zygote, and finally into an oocyst. The oocysts are passed out in the chicken's feces. Meanwhile, as the sporozoites keep multiplying in the chicken's intestinal cell, they eventually become so many that the chicken's intestinal cell breaks down and the sporozoites burst out. Because of this multiplying effect, a single oocyst eaten by the chicken can end up destroying several thousand cells in the chicken's intestine. The oocysts that are passed out of the chicken are not infectious at first. In order to become the infectious sporulated form of the oocyst, they need time, at least a day or two, and a warm, moist environment, ideally 21 to 32 degrees Celsius. The oocyst is very tough. It can survive months or years and can withstand heat and cold, although not freezing, and even bleach and other common disinfectants, while it's waiting for a chicken to come along and eat the little bug or piece of grain that the oocyst might be resting on. So this sounds pretty grim, but most adult chickens live with Coccidia inside their intestine with few or no symptoms. Part of the chicken's immune system produces macrophages, lymphocytes, and natural killer cells called T cells, which keep the parasites in check, so there are not hundreds of sporozoites bursting out of the chicken's intestinal cells all the time. It's when this delicate balance of parasite versus chicken gets out of control that the chicken gets clinically sick. This illness is called coccidiosis. The Coccidia multiply so rapidly in the chicken's intestine that they interfere with digestion and prevent her absorbing the nutrients from her food. And sporozoites burst so many cells in the chicken's gut that she suffers pain and gastrointestinal bleeding, as well as diarrhea, leading to anemia, dehydration, possibly septicemia, and maybe even death of the chicken. As you can imagine, a chicken with coccidiosis will look sick, standing around, not doing much, with puffed up feathers, maybe a pale, droopy comb, off her food, off the lay. In an adult chicken, this can happen for 3 reasons. The chicken herself has become immunosuppressed, maybe due to stress or another illness. and her immune system can't control the parasites anymore. The number of infectious oocysts in the environment is so high that the chicken consumes a lot of them and her intestine becomes overwhelmed by the infection, or the chicken encounters a slightly different strain of Coccidia and her immunity doesn't protect her from this one. This might be because she goes to a new home and the Coccidia strain is different there, or because a different strain of Coccidia arrives at your place on a new chicken, or by being transferred between properties by people, clothing, or equipment. Each little local environment has slightly different strains of Coccidia, and each chicken becomes tolerant of only the strains that she has been living with. An adult chicken might recover after a bout of infection, but for a young chick, coccidiosis can be fatal within a couple of days. Baby chicks are vulnerable to coccidiosis because they aren't born with natural immunity, and it takes time for their immune system to develop enough immunity to control the parasitic infection. And because they are fragile, even a small bleed can be a major health setback to a tiny chick. So what can we do to protect our chicks from coccidiosis? It's almost impossible to prevent the chicks from ever encountering coccidia. They would have to be maintained in a completely sterile and closed environment away from other chickens and any possible droppings from a passing wild bird for their entire lives. It is theoretically possible. It has been shown that chickens that are kept at all times on wire floors have a lower level of infection, presumably because most of their droppings fall through the wire, and so there's less likelihood of the chickens eating anything that's contaminated with droppings. Most people aren't going to want to keep their chickens in that kind of an artificial environment all their lives. But it's worth knowing that if you're taking on a rescue chicken who has lived inside on wire all their lives, then they're going to be much more vulnerable to coccidia once they get out into a more natural environment. Most commercially available baby chicks are inoculated with coccidia. One-day-old chicks are sprayed with live sporulated oocysts, either from a weakened strain of coccidia or in a very low dose. As the chicks groom themselves, the parasites get into their gut, but because the parasites are few or weak, they don't multiply quickly and overwhelm the gut cells. The chicken's immune system has a chance to develop immunity, and so they have at least partial protection against the wild strains of coccidia that they encounter as they leave the antiseptic environment of the hatchery. If you hatch your own chicks or get them from a small breeder, they probably won't be inoculated against coccidia. The process is complicated and needs a precise control of the spraying process, and the smallest vial is enough for 10,000 chicks. So it's just too difficult and expensive to do for small numbers of chicks. So this is where medicated feed comes in. Medicated chick feed contains a Coccidiostat that kills or weakens the coccidia parasites that the chick encounters, giving the chick a chance to develop immunity against them. Quite a few chemicals have been used as Coccidiostats, but the two most common types are the thiamine analogues, such as amprolium, and the ionophores, such as monensin. Amprolium works by interfering with the parasite's metabolism of thiamine, vitamin B1. It is fairly safe for chickens, and I think it's still widely used in the United States, but some species or strains of coccidia are resistant to it, and it's banned in Europe because it's also quite toxic to mammals. The ionophores work by interfering with the metabolism of sodium and potassium ions and kill the sporozoites as soon as they are liberated from the oocyst when the chicken first eats it, before the sporozoite can infect the chicken's intestine. The ionophores are inexpensive and very effective against coccidia, and the parasites don't seem to develop resistance to the ionophores. Ionophores are commonly used to improve the health of cattle and several other farm animals, and the use of ionophores doesn't interfere with the chicken's immune system. But ionophores are toxic to dogs and horses, so don't let them eat your chick crumble. The ionophores can only work if they are in the chick's digestive system when the chick eats the oocyst, and they have a narrow therapeutic range. So if you're going to use chick feed medicated with ionophore, you should start feeding it at day 1 and keep the chicks on it until they are old enough to have developed their own immunity. And you should avoid adding much in the way of treats or other food, or the chick won't be getting the right dose of the Coccidiostat. And by the way, if you feed medicated feed to chicks who have been inoculated with Coccidia, you will kill the Coccidia that they have been inoculated with, and so that will no longer provide them with the protection that they had. So if you do happen to feed medicated feed to chicks that have been inoculated with Coccidia, then you need to keep up with the medicated feed just as if they had never been inoculated in the first place. Are there alternatives that avoid the use of drugs? Well, yes. Of course, you can just wait for the chicks to develop their own natural immunity to the Coccidia in their environment. Eventually they will, as long as the number of oocysts in their environment is not too high. Although along the way some chicks might get sick with coccidiosis and maybe even die. So you have a responsibility to protect them from pain and misery as much as possible. There have been various investigations into the use of apple cider vinegar in chickens' drinking water, with inconclusively variable results. Some trials have shown no effect at all, but a widely quoted study done in Jordan in 2018 and published in a Polish veterinary journal indicated a reduction in the number of oocysts passed in the chicken's feces, although these results were from counting oocyst numbers in only 3 chickens. However, there is no evidence that apple cider vinegar does any harm, so there's very little risk if you want to add 2 to 3 mils of apple cider vinegar to each litre of water and serve it to your chickens every 2 or 3 days. The clinical effects of coccidiosis might possibly be reduced by antioxidants found in various fruit and herb plants and herbs and spices. Most of these don't act as coccidiostats, but they help the chicken's immune system to fight off the damage caused by the parasites. Just like us, chickens have beneficial microbes in their gastrointestinal tract that help digest food, keep the gut in good health, protect against inflammation, produce some vitamins, and boost the chicken's immune system to fight off pathogenic microbes and keep parasites under control. Chicks who are raised with their mother have a head start on developing a healthy microbiota because they are usually exposed to good bacteria from the mother's fecal material. Probiotics are feed supplements that contain live beneficial bacteria, with the idea that these beneficial microbes will supplement the chicken's own microbiome and provide health benefits. Although there is very little hard evidence that probiotic bacteria do make it through the digestive process and take up residence in the gastrointestinal tract, their use does seem to improve the chicken's overall health and immune system. I think we'll see probiotics for chickens becoming more mainstream in the future as the big poultry companies look for alternatives to antibiotics. So I hope this information is useful to you in helping to decide whether to choose chick feed with or without Coccidiostat. No matter whether you choose inoculation or medicated feed or neither, there are some steps we can all take to protect chicks from coccidiosis. As much as possible, keep chicks away from their droppings. Clean up droppings from the chick enclosure frequently. Keep the feeders full so the chicks don't have to search in the litter for feed. Keep feeders and drinkers at a height that minimises the chances of the chicks pooping into the feed or water. Unless being raised by a mother hen, keep young chicks separate from older chickens until the chicks' immune systems have fully developed and are able to control a low level of coccidia. If you have several flocks of different ages, work from the youngest to oldest, and then clean your hands, boots and equipment after the oldest group with the best immunity. Don't overcrowd your chickens. The reason that free-ranging chicks can often cope with exposure to wild birds is because the area they range over is big enough so that the parasite burden is low. Above all, keep their environment dry. Remember, oocysts will only sporulate and become infective in conditions that are warm and moist. But don't worry, healthy baby chicks will eventually develop their own immune system and grow into healthy chickens. Just enjoy them. And if you are raising baby chicks, do check out some of the other videos in my playlist about raising baby chicks. I hope you'll find some of them helpful. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.